Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fifth and final, unfortunately, talk of this collaborative series, which we hope will continue in different iterations moving forward. This collaborative series is called Collecting for Everyone. It's a partnership between AIPAD and Fotografiska. My name is Lydia Melamed Johnson. I'm the executive director of AIPAD, and I want to just note that there's been a bit of a personnel change tonight. As Sophie Wright is not able to join us, we wish her a very quick recovery, and she's with us in spirit as my collaborator and partner in getting this series off the ground. Have shifted into the moderator seat from a panelist, and we've brought in Veronica Houk, one of our AIPAD members, who is a younger generation of the firm, and we're thrilled to hear her perspectives on art fairs today. As mentioned, I'm here representing AIPAD. For those not familiar with us, that is the Association of International Photography Art Dealers, a community of 95 galleries from around the globe. The organization acts as a voice and central pillar of the photography community, and we're often most known for our flagship event, the Photography Show, an annual art fair at the Park Avenue Armory, which opens in exactly a week. So we hope you will all join us there, April 23rd through the 27th. It brings together our members, guest exhibitors, photo book, publishers, partners, to really showcase the best of fine art photography from around the world. This educational collaboration with Fotografiska is part of AIPAD's ongoing initiative to introduce photography collecting to new audiences. I'd like to thank Sophie in absentia and her team, especially Wendy, who's here with us tonight, and also my team, Irene and NJ, who are around somewhere, who have really worked daily to make this series possible. Thank you also to NeueHouse, Carl, and the incredible team for hosting us. We're so happy to be here. We've met so many of your members. For today's discussion, we've brought together a group of fantastic women to discuss how emerging collectors and new photography enthusiasts can navigate art fairs with confidence and knowledge and pre-planning as we prepare to open our fair next week. I'm just going to do a brief introduction of my panelists, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. Alicia is currently a director at Howard Greenberg Gallery. She's been with the gallery since 2007, and during her time there has curated exhibitions ranging from William Gedney to James Vanderbeek to Dave Heath, and their gallery will be showing with us next week, and we're very excited about the presentation. Next, we have Alice Sachs Zimet, who is a pioneering collector, advisor, and educator who began to collect photography back in 1985. She is the chair of the collection committee at ICP, the International Center of Photography, and the chair of the photography curatorial committee at the Harvard Art Museum. Alice is president of Arts and Business Partners, a consulting group working with photographers, photo collectors, and corporate sponsors, formerly the director of worldwide cultural affairs at Chase Manhattan. She generated over $2 billion in business using the arts as a strategic marketing tool. Her specialties are cultural marketing and communications. Lastly, but not least, of course, we have our newest guest, who I really appreciate for pinch hitting at the last minute. I might have sent her an email last night at 10 p.m., and she was I received a joyous and really positive email, which is great in the lead up to an art fair. You don't get a ton of those, and I'd love to do it. Please, thanks so much, excited. So that was very nice. Veronica Houk is the director of contemporary art at Edwynn Houk Gallery. She joined the gallery full-time in 2017 and works alongside her father, Edwin, and brother, Christian. Veronica focuses on the gallery's contemporary program and is particularly passionate about photography as a defining medium of our time. Beyond curating exhibitions and collaborating with artists, she particularly enjoys working with collectors at every step of their journey, whether that means sharpening a deep focus, branching into new directions, or finding joy in looking at and living with art for the first time. Her recent projects include the debut of Being There, a collaboration between Lee Schulman and Omar Victor Diop, which opens AIPAD weekend at the gallery's brand new location at 693 Fifth Avenue. And with those brief introductions of three really accomplished women, I'd like to start our conversation. Today I'm going to frame this conversation, which I feel can be so broad chronologically in two different ways. both through history and also how an art fair is planned by our gallerists and by collectors who are attending it, to give everyone a little bit of a background. So I'll start by looking back a bit for each of you into your histories and your interactions with art fairs, and then we'll move forward to the present with planning, and then look to the future and how collectors can navigate a fair while on site, with how to familiarize yourself with galleries, programming, how to introduce yourself, what questions to ask while considering a purchase. We'll end with a Q&A. We have a lot to cover. Okay, to all of my panelists, we've started a lot of these conversations by defining whatever medium we've been discussing. I think everyone knows what an art fair is, so I'm not gonna waste time on that. But I thought it would be fun to kind of similarly go back to the beginning and discuss each of your first interactions with an art fair. You can choose whether that's as an attendee, as a gallerist, as a collector, as an enthusiast, and really kind of what your first feelings were about them and how you feel about them now. So Alicia, we'll start with you.
Hi. My first fair was probably 2007 AIPAD, when I first started working at the gallery.
Okay.
But as an attendee, not working on the booth, it was overwhelming and exhilarating. It was the first chance I got to see some of these photographs in the flesh that I'd seen in books or in reproduction. And it was thrilling, but it took a while to sort of figure out how to navigate a fair and not be overwhelmed by it completely or swallowed by that.
Alice?
I have no clue. I remember going to the Hilton. So what year would that be for AIPAD?
Oh God, you're gonna call me out on
Anybody?
my history. I know that we were at the Roosevelt for at least 2 years, and that's 79.
So maybe
so
in the
81,
in the
82,
80s?
I want to say.
So I was an intern at ICP in the 70s, and that was my first introduction to just photography. And it took almost 10 years to start collecting. But I remember wanting to see as much as I could and the best way to see was to go to an art fair, because you had all these galleries in one room or two rooms or floors, and you begin to just say, I like this and I don't like that. But I remember just becoming almost addicted to going to AIPAD in the early years.
One of the healthier addictions, I think. Veronica?
My first experience was overseas at Art Basel, Hong Kong. So I think that brought in a really interesting cultural dimension that shows how much each fair really reflects its local community. And it was a very nascent fair, and they still had, they gave brochures out to collectors about how to act at a fair, and they had announcements every 15 minutes, don't touch the art. It was so interesting to see how, it was so international too, so all these cultures coming together, but really everyone sort of embarking together in this journey. Something that really stands out to me is because, like you said, you do become enthralled immediately. So I learned very quickly, wear comfortable shoes, bring layers, bring a snack. It can turn into a marathon quickly.
Certain fairs that will not be named recently have had some climate control issues, so I think it's very important that you wear layers, and not ours, I will say, but
It can either be super freezing,
yep,
or super hot under the lights.
yeah, exactly. So it's good to have layers, good to prepare, which we hope we can help you do today. So on that note, moving into kind of how a collector and a gallerist prepare for a fair, I think it's interesting and important for the public to understand what goes into these pop-up presentations, right? This is the gallery's version of a pop-up shop. It is the version of let's show our best, or let's show our most specific exhibition to the audience that we know we're gonna see. And so I'd love to talk to each of you kind of in your different roles about how your gallery, or as a collector and how as an advisor, in terms of on behalf of your clients, Alice, how you prepare for an art fair, because I think that can give some good background before we go into exactly kind of what it's like on site. So Alicia, I'll start with you again, if you don't mind.
Sure. So we always like to start sort of going back through the last couple years of fairs that we've done, get a sense of what's worked, what hasn't worked, which people have responded to. We like to look at the museums in whatever city we're doing our fair in and seeing if there's any photography shows that we can sort of enhance, bring our wares for that artist. And then we build out our booth wall by wall, looking at what are our artists currently up to, what kind of new work are they making, what kind of vintage work have we just gotten in on consignment, what feels relevant right now. And then with each wall, once we've determined that, we sort of build around with relevant artists or images.
Thank you. I think that's fast. Veronica, I'm going to go to you next, and then we'll go to the collecting side.
Sure. I would echo a lot of what you say. I think that most galleries, when we look at what we are bringing, it's responding to both historical presentations there, your past couple of years, and also the sense of what's urgent, right? So what feels very of the moment, whether that's through the museum, through something so exciting, so fresh, and it could be an older work that feel very relevant to that moment. And so I think that's what is a very unique experience about a fair, is that you really get to see what each gallery feels speaks to that time, rather than visiting their physical location and seeing maybe an exhibition that is not as timed.
So Alice, your question is going to be two-pronged. One, as a collector, what do you do to prepare for an art fair? What are you following? What are you doing? And then my second part for you is, because you're also in the advisor role, an educator role for so many, how do you prepare for your clients or for your students? And you can go kind of as far back as you want to in terms of this.
I was looking to see what the images were.
Yeah, and I'll go to yours.
So I'm neurotic, so I have notes. And when I organize to go to an art fair, I literally write down A, B, C, D for the rows, and I write down the numbers of the booths. So I know where I'm walking as I go through A through D. So I've already started for the fair next week. And and I look to see what each of the galleries do e-blasts and
so is that how I'm scrolling through your collection so that you can
okay.
so that people can see. Well, I think it's important, the breadth of what you collect and what you're interested in, because it shows kind of what you might be looking for within this
right
map.
But I like to be organized, because I think one of the things about an art fair is it can be overwhelming. And I don't know how many of you have been to an art fair, but you have 75 or 100 or more galleries. It's overwhelming. So that's one way for me to kind of organize myself, to write down the galleries, so I have an organizational sort of flow chart, and then what they're showing. In terms of collectors, I know what some people are interested in, so I will make dates one-on-one to take people to walk the fair or to go to certain galleries. We were talking earlier that there's some galleries where I know people are interested in certain images that they have back in the gallery, and I'll say to them, could you bring them to the fair, in a drawer, and we can pull them out.
Well, I thought that might be a nice way for you to think about. You were saying that you had a client who specifically was looking for a certain artwork, and that you knew exactly where to go because of the kind of gallery branding that you think of.
Exactly. So I wrote them and gave them images that I researched, and they want to come to the fair. So we made a date to go Thursday to the fair, and I contacted the gallery and I said, could you bring these images to the fair? Doesn't mean they're on the wall. There's plenty of things in the closets that you all want to.
And in the bins.
And in the bins. Actually, going through the bins was one of my favorite things to do, and there aren't as many bins as there used to be, I think. But to go through and see what you can come up with, and it's such a great learning experience. So
the exposure. I mean, I think that's, and so I wanted to bring up this slide of yours.
Oh, okay.
Because I think in our preparatory calls for this, of course, we all discussed kind of different pieces that might go into planning for an art fair. And I think you so eloquently said that galleries form brands, and they have brands similar to other industries. I don't want to compare art to others more nominally, but I think that you knew exactly when your client was coming who might be best fit for this.
So I think one way to sort of break down feeling overwhelmed is to think about brand is the equivalent to me of a theme. And that I have 3 themes in my collection, subconscious, but over 40 years, of France, art, portraits of artists. I used to work at the Metropolitan Museum and have a couple degrees in art history, so artists. My grandfather lived in France, so I started going when I was young. And then the portraits of artists morphed into humanity, images of humanity. And I think that, if you go back one slide, collectors have a theme or brand. So here you have it. Maybe it's fashion or it's nature. If you go to the next slide. Forward, sure. Or, these photographers have a brand. So Cindy Sherman and Bill Wegman with his dogs.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just have to call out that if anyone was here for our last talk about photographic ephemera, they will remember William Wegman's Lost Dog poster that he hand drew instead of using one of the thousands of photographs he had of his dogs. Sorry.
No, and I just
it's
want
still
to
one of my favorite things I've ever seen.
And the next slide, is the reason I put this up, is that galleries have a brand or a theme, more or less. And so if you, as you walk around and you begin to say, I'm attracted to landscape or fashion, you begin to think, where do you want to go? So I chose these galleries because they each, to me, are members of AIPAD and have specific brands. So Arnica Dawkins in Atlanta is contemporary African American. Clamp is contemporary with a little bit of a spin towards gay. Higher Pictures, contemporary emerging. Throckmorton, Latin America. Howard Greenberg, I think of as classic and classic contemporary. Not emerging contemporary, but classic contemporary. Hans Kraus, 19th century. And so each of these galleries, depending on what you might be interested in, are where you might go. So there's a kind of a connection between, like the 3 circles of the Olympics. So you, as a collector, would go to a gallery that has images that kind of connect with your, quote, brand or theme, or a photographer would show with that kind of a gallery. The gallery, I mean, there's sort of this troika that's connected. That's all.
To jump in there, maybe,
Absolutely.
Alice, I think that fairs are a really powerful engine to create relationships, right? So what you're saying about brand, I might think about building a relationship, right? So you might go to a fair and find some gem at one booth that is that your relationship with that gallery? Or you might discover that you really have shared taste and there's a whole program that you really respond to. And it's almost like speed dating, right? Like it could lead to something really long lasting. And I think that's what you're like that. When that does happen, that's such a powerful tool, and that's to be able to build a relationship with the gallery is a really wonderful and important community for a collector.
Or multiple galleries.
Or multiple galleries.
Yeah.
Well, I think actually, Alicia, that's exactly what I was going to kind of jump into, is that these art fairs are the opportunity to have all of these galleries under one roof. So if you don't yet know what your theme is, what your interest is, what you're drawn to visually, you can walk along and, whereas Alice says she's preparing in advance, you can take, and I brought props. This was last year's because ours this year hasn't printed yet, but you can take one of the maps, that have all the gallery names and you circle which ones you like. And then you go to their website or you go and talk to them. And it becomes something, or you follow them on Instagram. We've talked so much during these series about social media and about different online digital platforms, but it's the taste test, right? It's the tasting flight of galleries, and that you can go around and you can meet these people and you can start conversations without doing a global tour of art galleries, right? They're all under one roof.
I just want to say that I think it's as important to note what you don't like as what you do like.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
know, just to think, I don't like landscapes for the most part. I like people. But I'm just saying, there's no right or wrong. It's just your taste, and your taste is what you like, and also what you don't like.
Yeah. We kind of already got into the next chronological part of my talk because I thought it was too easy of a segue to go there. But I'd love to talk a little bit more on site about what some of the things are that people can look for and work with when they walk in the door of an art fair to better understand what's going on, what are the gallery motivations for being there, what are they looking for, what are they presenting, and how you can interact with galleries.
So I think first and foremost, it's important to remember that we are there to meet you. We are there to serve you. We are there to answer your questions about photography, the photography that we show. We're there to help you navigate it all. It's okay to ask somebody who a photographer is if it's somebody you're not familiar with but you like the work. It's okay to ask, are there more examples of this artist that I can look at to get a better sense of who they are? Did you bring anything else with you? What's on at the gallery right now? Get to know people. See how you sort of mesh with them, and what their program looks like, even beyond their booth, I think, is important as you begin your collecting journey.
Because kind of as we said in the beginning, when you think about curating these booths, you're bringing examples of what you show. You are not bringing everything you show.
Yeah.
So if somebody walks in and, I'm thinking of Alice's fantastic collection, but if somebody walks in and says, I love, one of these, this Bresson, and it's sold,
Yeah.
well, what did you love about it? Okay, we have two other Bressons. One I don't think is exactly what you're looking for, but I'd love to show you the other. Maybe you can come by the gallery. I'll email you a PDF,
Absolutely.
something like that.
I know where
But
there's one in a private collection they might be
Yes.
willing to sell.
Exactly.
Always just ask questions. Don't be scared of us. We want to talk to you.
And I think that's a huge part of what this series has been about, is that this is why galleries do art fairs. They want those conversations, and so much of the art world can be intimidating. And so to bring approachable people in front of you, but also to recognize that these are the people that are at the fair.
Yeah.
Veronica, do you want to go?
I think you answered that perfectly, Alicia.
Thanks.
Alice, do you want to speak more about why you attend fairs and why you bring people? And
So I guess one of the things I feel so strongly about, having been, I started out as a collector, and now being an advisor and an educator, it's kind of my third career. I have to say, and I've been to 2 or 3 other talks here as sitting in the audience, it is the most wonderful community. So I just want to just give a shout out to the fact that I've known Alicia for 17 years. I've known her boss, Howard, probably for almost 40. It's just, people stay in this field. They, maybe they change jobs, but they don't leave the field. And it's, you go to an art fair to look, but also to say hi, to give a hug, that's not the only reason you go, but there's just such wonderful relationships, and caring and asking questions, as Alicia said, is, I have a list of questions you should ask, and maybe we'll talk about them later, but the galleries are there to educate you and to make you feel comfortable. And everybody's a photographer today with their iPhone. And why this image? And everybody asks, will it hold its value? And nobody has a crystal ball. But the fact that it's just this welcoming community is one of the reasons for me I go to, it charges me. It makes me feel wonderful.
But I think that one of the things about art fairs is that it's an maybe easier way to enter that community than knowing what guest lists to be on or what mailing lists you need to be on for openings and those types of things. I think an art fair welcomes everyone, and then you can kind of make it what you want it to be.
Good point.
And I think that's kind of the sense of discovery that we feel so much. And I didn't talk about my first art fair experience, but that was for me what it was. I walked in and just saw an amazing array of things that I've never seen under one roof. I've seen them in the Met, over 16,000 galleries, all those different things. But to be able to kind of wander and discover, and yes, ask questions of you, and from booth to meet new people. And somewhere under that roof is going to be somebody who provides what you're looking for in terms of either the guidance or the work of art. And so that sense of discovery and that sense of community can kind of coexist in a way at our fair, and I think in the photography community, as you said. But I think that it's a good point, Alice, to go into a little bit more about photography specifically, because we are collecting for everyone about photography. And what are some of the questions you would think somebody might be intimidated to ask? Because there's so many different ways that you can enter a fair stand, and you can look around and you can say, what's the price of this? And then your eyes can go wide and say, absolutely not, panic. And we talked about, New York and having price lists, but what are some of the things that you would tell an emerging collector? And Veronica, maybe we'll start with you this time, of what are some of the what seem to be uncomfortable conversations you've had with new collectors that shouldn't be?
Oh, I think you hit on probably the one that maybe people feel the most awkward, like bringing price up, feeling awkward to do that. We're super happy to tailor our conversation and what we're showing for wherever you are in your journey. That's definitely part of it. And asking to see other works, I think, is a really important part. Not just if something is unavailable, but also I think seeing what else an artist has produced gives you a really good sense of their taste and whether you resonate with them. Basically, I don't actually feel like there's no question that feels inappropriate in line of like when you're talking about your what you're looking for, what you respond to. And ultimately, I would say, for galleries, we're trying to build a relationship of trust. This is what we do all the time. This is like what we're so passionate about. So I think that we're really trying to share our knowledge to the best of our ability. And sometimes I feel maybe that having a sense of, I feel I have one piece of the picture with an auction history, or I feel a little unsure of the gallery's relationship about this artist, can maybe make you feel like you are put on the back foot. But ideally, you're having like a really long-term relationship with that gallery. We want to do right by you, so being transparent is really helpful there.
Do you want to continue in that in any way? Or?
Yeah, in terms of the money thing, which I know when you're beginning can be sort of a daunting conversation. I mean, you might look at somebody's booth and say, I love what you do here, but everything ranges from $8,000 to $80,000, and that's not a comfortable price point for me. But I like what you do. I like this kind of work. Do you have other things like this in a budget that's more comfortable for me? That's it's okay to say this isn't for me, but what else you got?
I love that. I think that's probably pretty surprising to most people who think that you walk into an art gallery or an art fair and, if you have to ask, you can't afford it, which I think is such a horrible, misnomer.
There's
about
other
this.
things. We can still find you something you love in your price point.
Yeah.
And we can also continue the conversation even if you're not a buyer, right? So I think hearing a number that's not what you had in mind doesn't end the conversation. And I think that it's always great to start, even if you have like an artist you want to stay on top of, just to see how their career progresses. That's a really important way to do that.
Yeah.
Alice, how do you walk through your advisees or somebody who's looking in one of your classes to start collecting? What are some of the first questions that you walk them through?
I'm not going to talk about price.
Okay, great.
So I think when you think about collecting, there are personal considerations and there are technical considerations. So personal, all four of us would have different opinions. Do you like black and white? Do you like color? How big are your walls? Do you live in a New York City apartment? Do you live in a house in Texas? I mean, so there are considerations, themes. We all may have different themes. budget. We may have different budgets. But all of this is personal. So that is sort of one bucket. And then there's the technical considerations, the questions to ask as you get deeper into this. And the galleries are there to help. But the questions would be, there's a negative date, there's a print date. What are they? What's the condition? You know, photography is a piece of paper. So you ask, you know, a gallery will be able to tell you what the condition is. Is it stamped? Is it signed? What else? I wrote down how rare is this print? How many exist? Who owned it? Did anybody own it before? The provenance. You know, the Museum of Modern Art, I think twice has sold off duplicates. Or, you know, Elton John has sold recently, Keith Haring's collection. I mean, I once bought an image. I did a trade actually with Howard Greenberg, and one of the things that made me, it was a Lisette model that I think is actually on the screen, the bather. But that came from Harry Lund's collection, who was one of the first photo dealers based in Washington, D.C. and Paris. And I loved the fact that the stamp on the back came from Harry's collection.
I have to give a brief shout out to a podcast collaboration we're doing right now with Subtext and Discourse, because we did a podcast with 4 former AIPAD presidents, as well as with Howard Greenberg, 2 different episodes, and Harry figures hugely in both, in every episode. Really, I think he's been mentioned, and he's such a huge, towering figure in the history of the photography market, and AIPAD in particular, for the support he gave to young dealers. And I would wonder if the stamped, you know, because Howard talks about...
He was so scary.
Well, but it's funny you say that, because yes, he was scary, but he was also the most giving in what he supported young galleries to do. So, you know, I wonder, Howard talks about getting some really good material from him, and it's like, I wonder if this is one of those pieces that he was talking about. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Not at all, but I'm just saying, so, you know, the question was what to think about, and I think there's the personal considerations. Like, I happen to like black and white a little more than color. And then there are the technical, which are the questions that you should be asking the dealers. Looking to see.
I'm looking at some of your black and whites.
Yes. Oh, that's the Lisette model that I traded. Yes. So.
Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I was actually thinking you used the word discovery before.
Yeah.
And if you go forward a little bit,
Sure.
There are 2 photographers I feel like I discovered. I mean, not. That's the first one. So in 2014, I was at AIPAD, and Yancey Richardson had the image on the left, just that single image. And I was struck by, I love African photography, and it reminded me of studio work, and it was the eyes. So because of seeing that at AIPAD, I went to the gallery to learn about this photographer who's from South Africa, who was documenting the queer movement of South Africa in the early 2010, 11, 12, and was aiming to do 500 images. And so when going to the gallery, I realized that the intention of the artist, I couldn't buy 1. I wanted to buy 3, and I have no idea if these are men or women. But I was so struck. Then it turns out, and this is discovery, if you go to the next slide, it says, so Zanelli Maholi, who actually has a show opening at Yancey's tomorrow.
And it will be in conversation right where you're sitting on Friday with NeueHouse and Aperture and AIPAD working together to continue our collaboration.
And we didn't plan this.
Nope, not at all. I know, but it's I have to give a shout out to that. So they will be right here with Yasufumi.
And Zanelli is one of these people so quiet and reserved, and not at all, this image of self-portrait looks defiant and is anything but that as a person. But you know, when I found the work in 2014 was when I bought it. Nobody really had heard of Zanelli, but I just fell in love. And now they've had 2 retrospectives at the Tate, at Brooklyn, is in the collections of, you know, V&A, the Tate,
They just had a show at SF MoMA.
just had a show at SF MoMA. I mean, I'm sorry?
There's an exhibition at SCAD as well.
As SCAD, right, recently. And it makes me feel so good that, going to AIPAD, going to an art fair, trust your eye and the fact that this is discovery. I mean, you found an artist. And the next, just one other slide, the next artist, Christian Walker, who I bought at AIPAD last year, is a Black gay photographer who died in the early 2000s, but was part of the Boston Circle with Nan Goldin, and I don't know if died of an overdose, or AIDS, but that era. And there's so much attention now going back to those that we lost during the AIDS epidemic. So this artist, Christian Walker, who's now been recently bought by the Whitney, and since I bought this last year, Dallas and the MFA in Houston is going to have a wall at AIPAD at Jackson Fine Art, which is a gallery in Atlanta. But it makes you feel good that you to trust your eye. So.
But it also speaks to, and I think this is, the word discovery is a great one, because it also can be rediscovery, right? Christian's work has been around. It has been really rediscovered. It has been known, but maybe not appreciated in the same way. And to stumble upon it and then to see it grow that way. But I think the Zanelli story is really incredible. I mean, that's 11 years. What a trajectory.
They said we had a 10th last year when I bumped into them in Paris. Got a big hug, and because I've really been a cheerleader for years, and said we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Wow.
So, nice.
I want to ask Alicia and Veronica, I think that the story of you Alice falling in love with one of Zanelli's works and then going and seeing kind of more about what the artist's intention was is maybe something I'd love to ask you two about what kind of interactions you've had like that, where somebody's maybe fallen in love with something and maybe it's been sold or maybe it's part of a larger series, and how you guide somebody who might not know that this isn't the only photograph Christian has done. So I don't know, Alicia or Veronica, whoever wants to start.
I feel like it's a fairly common interaction. And it's exciting when somebody discovers a new photographer in your booth or in your gallery, wherever it may be. It's fun to get to say, let me show you what else they've done. It's exciting. We're passionate about the work. We want you to see how amazing they are too. And if we're standing in a booth, sometimes we have closets with us and boxes, and we can say, come on into the closet. Let's take a look. We have iPads with us. Let's take a look. We can recommend books. We can say, come to the gallery. We can look at the work together. But it's really one of the more fun parts of the job, is getting to sort of rediscover an artist with somebody who's excited about it. So showing them more is always just a pleasure.
I would say, just to segue a little bit off that, I think like the sense of excitement, all of us keep returning to that. I think the feeling of just being able to be excited and you're in a room of everyone else that's excited is really special. And even if you don't want to move forward with a purchase at that time, I think remembering that and sticking to your guns there is really important. And I might get in trouble for this, but I don't like asking partners for their opinions on work or permission to I don't think that you have to agree with your partner about any photograph or piece of art. It's so personal. I think that's what offices were made for. So I think that sense of excitement just to me seems great. But you're right. There's always more to see. The best part about being in a fair, though, is you get to see in person, which really can't be replicated. And that's where so much of an education can happen. And that's what's so unique about art, too, right? We've talked a little bit about money, a little bit about investments, but with art, you are living with that every day on your wall. You grow with it and you change with it. And the art doesn't change in most cases, but you do. And being able, the more you see, even without talking to people, even without words, that is going to inform the way that you see the next things.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Oh, okay.
Fall out of love too.
Well, that's what I was going to point to. Is I was going to say we've already discussed an instance where you, Alice, traded something in, right? You moved forward
And I
with
could
your
kick myself,
collecting
yeah.
like journey, and you said this was something that served me at that time, but I'm interested in something else now, and that evolution happens for most collectors.
But
I
it
think.
also brings up relationships.
Yeah.
Because when that artist joined the stable of Howard Greenberg Gallery, I was able to reach out to Howard and say, would that be possible to do a trade? So I think back to relationships and how important they are.
I actually want to say something too, which I think is important to
Uh-oh.
keep in mind with collecting. I could be misremembering, but I feel like when you and I have talked about that particular piece, that purchase for you was a should. You know, this is an artist I should have represented in my collection versus this is something I really want to live with. And it's a conversation I've had with other collectors as well who have said, it's the head that I always regret. You know, it's never the heart or the gut. It's always the head pictures that I regret, saying I should have this. It's a smart buy. It's good money. It's an important photographer, but that they don't like emotionally connect with it necessarily.
Right. And you know, it didn't fit in, and I have these 3 themes. And there are other times where I can remember with Soul Lighter, having the opportunity and not buying something, and I could kick myself. But as you begin to develop a theme and the likes and the dislikes, you're absolutely right. It just was like putting a square peg in a round hole. It was like the should.
They should.
Hmm. And I love my bather.
No, I should go back. I think that's actually a great slide to talk about as we kind of wrap up today, because it shows the disparate parts of your collection, right? It's very, there's similar photos in ethos, right? But so different in subject
This is the
matter.
humanity, you know, so there's
Yeah.
France, easy artist portraits, of which there are about 40, France, and then the artist portraits morphed into people living their lives, just humanity. And so there's a lot of identity issues. There's issues of childhood, which you can see on the right. The joy of living life to its fullest.
Yeah.
It's the gamut. Yeah.
But I also want to just say that I think it's interesting that this photo represents, you know, what you could call a mistake in your earlier collecting, in that you bought something that then you traded, and it's fine. You've ended up with something that you loved, and that kind of a misstep isn't the end of the world. Right. If you're collecting within your means, and if you're not stretching for things that you shouldn't be trying to stretch for, that a kind of misstep or something that maybe isn't something that fits in your exact theme or what you ended up being visually interested in, you can pivot, and these things happen, and it's not the end of the world. And I think that for me as a young collector, that was something that was a fear that I was going to buy something and it was going to be a mistake, which it really can't be if you love living with them. But if you do, it's okay. You're gonna live to collect another day, and you're gonna build one of the most important photography collections like Alice has. So I think that that's also what I loved about this slide, was that it showed kind of your changing taste and some of your pieces that indicate humanity. But yeah, I think I want to just kind of give each of you a second for any closing remarks. This, more so than our other parts of this series, haven't been on a specific topic, but more on what it's like to interact with art and with dealers in person. And so what is something that you would want to share, whether your own experience or guidance for looking ahead? And of course, I'm excited about the photography show next week. Oh my God, if only. Next week, you can tell it's coming. Or what other fairs you're looking forward to. But I would just like to kind of give you each space to speak for a few minutes about anything, and then we'll open it up to questions.
I will be brief. Photography dealers, for the most part, are nice people. We're warm. We like to talk about photography. We love photography.
You're nerds.
We're
I think we
nerds.
can say you're nerds.
We're nerds, and we want to share it with people. And it's really thrilling to interact with people who get just as excited as we do and respond to the kinds of things that we respond to. So please come say hi to us and talk about photographs. Come to the fair next week.
Alice?
I have a very simple philosophy that I say to everybody, and certainly in all the classes, which is you have to buy with your heart. That's the work has to resonate, and four of us are going to have different things that we love, but you have to buy with your heart. You then should be buying with your brain, asking those questions, and you should never ever buy with your ears because somebody says this is the hot new artist. So that's my philosophy.
Veronica?
I think that's great advice. I think when you go into an art fair, there's both maybe the works you've identified with your friends, with your advisor, with gallerists who reach out to you and say, I think you would love to see this. And there's also a lot of new opportunities. So being open, I think, goes a long way. I might say, I totally agree with you, Lydia. I think that we all change, and that the sense of, oh, maybe I'm growing less with this work is totally natural, the way that you're not a plant owner until you kill your plants, or maybe you have to fall off a horse to be a rider, right? But also I think there's other ways to mitigate that, right? Putting it, rearranging. But I also think it's totally fine to save for the best, right? And I think that sometimes that can get you really far, right? Not to feel, I kind of liked a couple of things, and that one was in my budget, and the one that I loved was not where I am right now. If you can use that for maybe a purchase next year, I think that can go.
If it's still available.
That's right. You are taking a little bit of a risk, so there's more education
That's
there.
where the relationship comes into.
Yeah.
Can you let me know if we're reaching the end of the rope? I'm just going to use a tiny bit of time to, as more of a fair organizer, some of the pieces that we think can help with this education is the programming. AIPAD, as you know, and as I said during my intro, is very invested in the education of the collector and the connoisseur. And so we have a super vibrant program where we'll have 12 talks this year. A lot of them are with artists. They're with experts in 19th century. We have first generation artists talking about being American creatives in the current situation. We have our AIPAD award winners from MFA Boston. But I think that they're lectures. It's really wonderful. You can go and listen to people talk about these things that you're interested in. They're 45 minutes to an hour long, just like this, and you can learn a lot from people that are coming from all over the globe. We have a really incredible one on Japanese women photographers on Sunday, and a new book by Aperture there. So I would just like to point out that fairs have also additional educational elements that can be mined while you're wandering around and meeting people. And also, so many of the people that are in the programs, I'm showing Dawood Bey and Valerie Vincent Cassell, who are two, giants in the field. They were open to questions after this talk, right? It's not so often that you would be in a room with Bey that you could ask him anything or go up and shake his hand after. So they also, we've talked a lot about the galleries, but also the access to artists is something that fairs can offer. But I just want to thank my panelists for all of your preparation for this, and thank you so much for sharing today. And then we'll open it up for questions. Do we have a, no? Okay.
Hey there, my name's Andreas. First and foremost, this was amazing, great insight, so thank you very much. So my question is this, I'm coming up on, I'm an artist myself, I'm a collector too, but this question is from the artist's point of view. Coming up on Art Basel and being presented with the opportunity to do Art Miami, which is a big gallery exhibit. Typically, I do Spectrum or Red Dot in the past, and my question is the financial risk like to reward when you start to do a higher gallery like Art Basel or Art Miami, because you have to pay for your wall? At what point is the financial risk worth the reward?
So you're working with a gallery at this at these fairs, or you're determining which fairs to participate in? Can you go louder?
Let's get the mic again. So I have an art broker in Miami, and in the past, I always work with him. I did Art Expo New York and had a great exhibit, and then an art gallery came to me through the exhibit and said, hey, we want you to do Art Miami. But the cost is 4 or 5x more for that wall than what I normally pay. So that's kind of how this got presented to me, and I'm trying to decide in my head, is it worth paying $20,000 for a wall when normally I pay $2,500?
Got it.
So I think that that's something that I just want to speak to, is that that's a different art fair model than one that Veronica or Alicia work in that the galleries that are showing, that their galleries represent artists, and their, I suppose, the artist's financial incentive comes from them selling the work, not by the artist investing in the exhibition itself. So I don't know if either of you feel you can answer that question, or if it's one that, I'm sorry, I don't know if we're the best to answer for you.
I'll say this, it's always a risk, even the more expensive, better art fairs. There's just never, better, that was unfair of me. The more expensive, high-profile art fairs, it's just always a risk. Sometimes you feel a little flush and you're willing to take the risk, and other times it just doesn't feel right, but there's just no guarantee.
No crystal ball.
No crystal ball, I'm afraid.
I'll add to that, though. I'll add from the marketing side, I would want to know how many eyeballs are on that wall. Like, if it's exponentially more people at the fair, then it might be worth the money to be there. It's like just a reach thing. We'll take a question up here, but we should swing back to that after.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about that at the bar.
Hi, my name's Art. Oddly enough. I love the AIPAD fair. I've been going every year. I was trying to think, when did I start? I don't even remember. It fine-tunes my eye for what's possible in a photograph. It begins to give me a sense of what's valuable. I've never seriously considered buying anything because I don't have the faintest idea what I'm getting into. I tend to assume that whatever I buy, it's basically, it's like a lifetime purchase, basically, that I can't, turn around the following year and sell it for what I paid. Or, I mean, galleries have a lot of overhead and expertise, and when you buy a piece, a lot of what you're paying for is probably a very good value, but it's not what you get when you want to resell it. If I spend $1,000 or $5,000 on a piece, I have to sell it in 5 years for some reason. Am I going to get 10%? Am I going to get 25%? Will there be no market at all? I think your answer is probably the correct answer. It's like, who knows? It all depends, right? But I haven't felt any sense of how to onboard with the whole collecting thing. I mean, I love the fair to pieces. I just love it. But I haven't felt any sense of how to begin to be a collector, other than that whatever I spend, that picture is better be worth $5,000 to me personally.
So you come to the fair,
Yeah.
you enjoy it, you
Yes.
love it.
Yes.
is the barrier for you that you worry you won't be able to resell something? I'm trying to more
Oh, that's
distill
part
kind
of
of
it.
what do you feel is the hill to overcome?
That's
Because
part
that's
of
what that's what we're trying to answer for you.
Yeah, that's part of it. The other part is I don't have a sense of what makes one piece worth a lot more than some other piece.
I mean, Alice, do you want to take?
I was going to say you should take class with me.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, it's interesting. Relationships. So I traded something, but I've had clients who purchase things that are somewhat expensive, and they hesitate, and the dealer will say, if you ever want to sell, I want you to come to me first. And that's back to having a relationship. I don't know if you two want to comment on that, but I don't think you're stuck. And that's what it sounds like. You said, I made a purchase for life. You didn't. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know
But
if you, either of you or
I
anyone
just-
wanna- I'm
But
sorry?
I just want to add. But I just want to add something to that is that also kind of what you said earlier is knowing what you love and what you hate, right? Knowing what you don't like is as important. But I think the other piece of being a collector is wanting things. You know, we're talking a lot about what to do if you don't like something, but you fell in love with, I don't know what it is, right? You fell in love with something at AIPAD last year.
Yeah.
And if you bought it because you fell in love with it and it was affordable to you, I guarantee you still love it. If you these things we're talking about, the missteps, the piece that got traded, these were not something that she turned around the corner and fell in love with. And I think being a collector is collecting what you love and is making that purchase when you have the ability to and you're absolutely in love with something. I don't think you're going to regret it.
I would also very briefly just add on, I think that thinking about the relationship you have with a work outside of its value as like an asset class can help to alleviate a little bit of that concern, because it's something that you like use every day. You get to enjoy it every day. That is value. And so the advice I would give is like that value seems big picture more important than what happens plus or minus at the end.
Next question, sorry.
Hi. In answer to your question, indirectly, my first piece that I got at auction was a Robert Frank for $5,000 plus commission. And it means something to me because I realized he took the picture on this boat called the Mauritania. And that same year he took the picture, my aunt immigrated to America on that ship. So it's both meaningful and affordable, you know, if you're in the right place at the right time. That's all I wanted to say. It's possible.
Thank you.
Well, I was just wondering if you think there's a difference between European galleries and American galleries and how they approach the business and aesthetics.
I wish we
Then
had.
My second question is if you've had pieces that you've sold that you regret, and which ones were they?
Well, for the first part, unfortunately we don't have one of our European galleries here, so I wish I could answer that, but I'm sure you can ask them that question next week at the fair. We have quite 1/4 of our galleries are European, so you can ask them yourself, and you can also see for yourself. I think that's telling. But I love, you know, in terms of what we can answer today, I love your second question, and I think it would be great to talk to any of you.
Of course I have regrets. 40 years, who doesn't have a regret? But, you know, and I did sell some things. I fell out of love. And I'm happy. I did. I'll tell you, I'm very unhappy with, there was one very well-known, Nan Golden. It was the cover of The Ballad of Sexual Dependency. I bought it for $2,200 early on. I had it in every room in my apartment, and I just couldn't connect to it. And I did sell it at auction and bought something else, and to this day, I regret it. There are other things I've gotten rid of and I don't get rid of very much, and haven't really in the last 10, 15 years. But I think that's the nature of collecting, of falling in love, and falling out of love. I mean, I would assume, that the stable of artists that Houk and Greenberg both represent, it changes, I bet. Maybe you want to.
Yeah, and sometimes we have stuff come into the gallery. I'm sure this happens to you too, particularly with older things that you're maybe only going to see once in your life. And it's such an amazing experience to get to sort of temporarily live with it in the gallery. And then it finds its home, which is a wonderful thing. But, you get a little sad that you have to sell it.
My biggest regrets always have to do with like parting with a work rather than bringing something in to my personal collection that maybe my feelings don't change that drastically about it. But sometimes I wasn't decisive enough, or I had to part with it for a different reason, and that's what sticks as the regret.
The worst one for me is I waited 2 days too long and it was sold. And I was just like, oof. But, you learn something from it, and, that desire is there, and I always look out for where they could be. So I think that's great. Sheila. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, hi there.
Hi.
Thank you all for sharing tonight. First of all, I agree with what Art said. I do love AIPAD. My first AIPAD was probably in 1993 at the Hilton. And I love it even more because now you've returned last year to the Armory, which fits like a glove. One of my favorite things is after I've purchased my ticket is when I enter into the Armory, first to look up to the ceiling, and I know I've arrived. So this question is to Alicia and Veronica. I'm curious to know, it's a different landscape. It's almost like a Super Bowl or a marathon to be in an art fair. What is that like? And also, as an observer of what you do, is watching your eyes and knowing that you're zeroing in on this person's a buyer, and he's going to buy maybe 3 as opposed to 1 or none. And the other factor is, how do you decide and how far do you plan in presenting, say, a single photographer's work, which of course is done, I think, at AIPAD, but also like Perry Photo, or you show many of your collection? Thank you.
Okay, I'll go backwards. We very rarely do a solo artist booth. There's only one fair over the years where we've sort of consistently done that. At a fair like AIPAD, Perry Photo, we like to show a plethora of work and sort of as many different kinds of work as possible. What's it like to work a fair? It is exhilarating and exhausting. It's wonderful. It's so great to be in a room with all of our colleagues and all of these people that are so enthusiastic about photography. But it's a long week. It's a long week. A lot of sugar, a lot of caffeine.
Yes, I think the amount of people that we're meeting in a fair is probably the most that we meet in like a whole week at any time of the year. Particularly with something like AIPAD, right? It's every single person you've ever met in your life because these are all of our colleagues, these are all of our collectors. Like, you know everyone, and your brain's always working to place people and remember those details.
It's been likened often to camp.
Yeah, definitely. So it's always helpful when you come up if you've met someone. Share your name, share a little context clue. We really appreciate it after we've been on our feet, without a meal for a couple of hours. And any notes you can share when you follow up, sort of like to reiterate, is great because we have so much to do, but it's so fun. I would also say, I think a single booth presentation is, I always really, really appreciated it when galleries do that, and I think it's a really incredible identity stamp for the fair. But a lot of galleries are there to sort of equally share the diversity of their program.
First, thank you for this evening, ladies. But the question is for the 4 of you, 3 of which I've met, and some I know very well. The market of photography started 60s, it started to open, 70s, etc. The classic. In the 90s, it became about size. Then there was the problem of digital photography and pigment prints. Alice, me, you, we like the classic things. It changed the market. Now I'm wondering, since AIPAD is next week, AI, don't cringe. You're on camera, please. Don't cringe, all right?
Sheila, I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to say that we were in the green room, and I said, we'll talk for 45 minutes. We'll kind of let it go where it goes. Then we'll have a pretty robust Q&A.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
We'll have the AI question.
Yeah.
Verbatim.
And of course, it had to be me. Yes.
Lloyd.
Huh?
Lloyd had the entire.
Yes.
All right. You
yeah.
knew what I do. All right. We published yesterday an edition where I'm still weeping about it because it goes against everything I believe. I don't care. It's not about what I believe or care. I wonder, by the way, congratulations on Danny Lyon. I'm really interested in what you think. I mean, it's not like a trick question. I wonder at AIPAD, how much are we going to see? I mean, the Jeu de Paume in Paris. Now it's a museum only for artificial intelligence. They dressed up on a show. I threw up. But
so, I mean, I think it's a question that, as I said, we all expected.
Okay.
I have, of course, I don't represent artists. I don't have that. I know in terms of AIPAD kind of what we do, what we think of it. And when I say we, I really mean me. There's no we here. But for me, the question of AI and how it's changing photography can go back to kind of the history of photography. Photography, more than any other fine art medium, is one of technology and one of technological advances. It's the only one that can work within this. It's the only one that's able to answer this question or even ask the question. And I think of it, and this is again personally, I think of it as a tool. I think of it as the same way that we look at Photoshop for photographers when it first came out, that if the artistic intent is still there, if there is a human using these tools, then why not see where it goes and why not see what they create with it? I think that, and again, I'm going to keep going back to this because AIPAD is not liable for what I'm saying. I think that as a tool, it's really fascinating, and to me, it's just the next step of the photographic technological advancement. Whether it's good or bad, I couldn't possibly say. The good part about it is the accessibility factor, and that there are artists who might want to work in lens-based art that AI can help them from an accessibility standpoint. And so I find that as an interesting way to enter it. And that's what I will say on it.
I mean, I don't even think I could add anything to that. I think that, I think I'm still sort of figuring out how I feel about it, but how I feel about it doesn't really matter so much. As you said, photography is a technical medium, and it's been changing since the beginning. It's inevitable. And I think that your points are perfect.
I stay away, as I did with NFTs. I'm a purist. I just.
Should we end on that?
Veronica, do you want to add anything? I mean, I think, yeah.
I would echo. I think photography is about radical change, but I think in a day when people have relationships with AI, right? There's something about the human condition that you can learn from AI. Like I feel I feel we should be open to the idea that this technology can teach us something about what has previously been the realm of only the human mind and only through art. Yeah.
The one thing, and again, this is me personally, I will say I don't like the gotcha element of it. I think, and this is something that I can say in terms of AIPAD, if AI is used in any way in any photograph that is on the floor of AIPAD, it is in the labeling. That there is, I have no time for the gotcha moment that AI seems to bring into these conversations of the like, oh, you thought I did that? I didn't. I don't think that helps anyone. I don't think it helps bring AI any type of credibility, against some of the purists. And I also don't think there's anything wrong with being a purist. I think that's what's fantastic about photography, and specifically, I think it's great. What's about AIPAD is that you have those different brands, right? Like Hans is not interacting with AI, and I love that for him, and other people are, and I think that's great. But the clear labeling and the clear discussion of why AI was used, to me, is vital to this conversation, and maybe something that I didn't include in the beginning.
I would say also, in especially a fair like AIPAD, a lot of what is created is using the technology in such an innovative way that I've heard so many conversations where people assume something is AI generated, and really it's the artist working in the darkroom in a completely new technique. So if you think that something looks artificial, ask some questions, because it can be the way that it was created can be so fascinating and really hold the secret to that work.
And I think artists are also recognizing that there's now this question: did you do this, or was this AI, or did you do this through AI? We're doing, and you guys are getting a little bit of a preview, we're doing an Instagram collaboration with an Instagram account that I'm obsessed with. And they did these whole recreations for us of the external banners of the fair. And they included a reel of them building these things that they shared with us because they were worried that when we shared them on Instagram, people would think they were AI. So I think that realization from artists is already in the ether, and that they're recording themselves. They're doing, which is going to be hard in a dark room, but we'll see how people answer.
But I mean, the cat's out of the bag, right? So isn't it at the end of the day still about the kind of visionary work or the work that's created?
Well, that's what we were speaking.
Whether it was done by
Yes, but don't you?
camera?
Yes, but that's the artistic intent that we were discussing in the beginning. Yeah.
I was just thinking of one of the very first photographs ever done, where this guy the photographer was doing a street view from his window of his apartment, and all you see is one guy with his foot on a step, and it turns out he was having his boots polished, and that because it took so long to do a picture in 1840, he was the only one who stood still. You look at that picture and you think the street was deserted, but it was a very busy street, it turns out. So photography can fool, and photography can lie, but again, it's the intent to lie that is what's bad. Same thing with AI. And it just has to do with honesty. And fortunately, the photographer who did the picture in 1840 was honest. Thank you.
Any final questions? Well, I thank you that was a fantastic Q&A. I think one of our more interesting. Thank you to the panelists, and we'll see you all at the photography show next week.